Inside, Alfred North puts Dallas on top.
We need to play better, so that's really where our focus is.
Feed Elliott, coming right, 50-yard line and sprinting. He's going 20 and 10. Zeke Elliott. He peels around left. Now he throws it in the end zone. Jason Witten. Touchdown. Cowboys win.
Give to Elliott up the middle at the 20 to the 10, and he will go to the end zone. Ezekiel Elliott with 9 seconds left. What a football game!
Over and over again, at critical moments, he came up with big plays. He just played winning football for us. The kind of team we want to build, handle any situation, go on and have the kind of guys who are going to respond the right way. He's certainly done that all year long.
Good day. Welcome into First Take on this Friday Eve. Thank you so much for hanging with us. Max and I here in Bristol. Stephen A. is in New York City. What's going on, guys?
Who the hell came up with that leader?
Oh, why do you get so angry?
This is what we got to deal with today. I mean, the show hasn't even started yet, and I got to be annoyed and disgusted with highlights of the Cowboys. This is a Max Kellerman
too early
thing.
for this.
He put y'all up to this. Molly, you put him up to this. What's wrong with y'all?
See, I haven't had any caffeine yet.
Get this agitated this early in the morning still.
This is a lot. This is a lot right now for me.
Really?
Yes.
Really? Y'all don't get where I'm coming from? Y'all don't feel my annoyance? I mean, are you kidding me? The show hasn't even started yet, and already a bunch of highlights from the Cowboys?
The real deal. Dak's the real deal. Cowboys won the draft. I faced it.
They haven't won the division yet either. Let's be honest.
All right. Let's get into it. So
Miss
it's
Connecticut,
Thursday.
you're such a traitor.
Oh,
such a traitor.
Now he brings back Miss Connecticut. That's what he wants to. That's what he wants to hate on me.
Ad hominem.
Love you too, Dr. Smith. So it's Thursday, and you know what that means. Week 13 in the NFL kicks off tonight. Dak Prescott and his 4th-ranked offense is taking on the Vikings and their 3rd-ranked defense. So what will give Dallas favored by 3? And it is still uncertain if Mike Zimmer, who had emergency eye surgery, will coach in that game. I apologize there. I thought we had a little bit of sound, but we don't. Stephen A., let's get right into it. Will this game tell us anything about Dallas?
No. It's not going to tell us anything about the Dallas Cowboys. What is it going to tell us? I mean, the Vikings have an elite defense. We all know that. Xavier Rhodes is a bad boy, a corner that I think needs to be recognized as being one of the great corners in the game today. But offensively, what do they have? There's no Adrian Peterson. That means there's no rushing attack whatsoever. They only average like 1.5 yards per carry before contact, for crying out loud. This is the worst in the NFL. Stephon Diggs ain't 100% healthy. Kyle Rudolph looks slower than ever before. I don't even know who their number 2 receiver is. They've lost a couple of offensive linemen all year long. They're depleted at that particular position, so they can't run block. They can barely protect the passer. It's just that Sam Bradford gets rid of the ball quicker. I mean, what are we going to learn about the Dallas Cowboys here? That they can beat up on a depleted team? I mean, that's about all that you're going to learn. That their offensive line can, plug holes or push holes as wide as Broadway on a Sunday morning. I mean, what are we going to say? It's really nothing to say right now. I don't expect, nor do I anticipate, to learn absolutely anything whatsoever from the Dallas Cowboys in this particular game. As far as I'm concerned, Minnesota is depleted. Minnesota is not fully loaded. As a result, they're not the same team they were earlier on in the season. As a result, the Dallas Cowboys, America's team, is going to get away with having a basic gimme because the Vikings are only half a team right now. I don't anticipate we'll learn anything. Nothing at all.
Are you quite done? Look.
Yes.
Look. What do I always say? In the NFL, only the Patriots are actually a good team at all points in the season. Right? I mean, most teams, the character of the team, even the good ones, changes throughout the course of the season. Sometimes they wear down through attrition and injury and other teams figuring them out. Sometimes they get better as their offensive line gels and they evolve greater chemistry with each other and all those kind of things. But the Cowboys have forced their way into that kind of Patriots conversation this year, just this year, where they have been good all year long, really good, and getting better. And yet, when you look at the record, they've only played 3 playoff teams. They've had a soft schedule. 3 playoff teams. Washington, the Giants, and the Ravens. And those aren't like
Giants?
3. Yeah.
Wait When did the Giants become a playoff team?
If
when
the season were to end today, those 3 teams would be in the playoffs. That's what I mean. That's what I mean by playoffs.
What they're doing this year.
Right,
I thought you were talking about. I apologize. I thought you were talking about recent history.
I didn't say 2-time Super Bowl champions. Then in recent history, that would be the Giants. I just said teams that would be in the playoffs right now. And those are not world beater teams. Let's be honest. And yet, the Giants actually have the best record of those 3 teams. And they actually beat the Cowboys. The one playoff team, if the season ended today, that the Cowboys played with the best record actually beat them. So even the good teams, even the Cowboys, you are constantly looking for evidence throughout the course of the season that they're actually good. And you're right about everything you said about the Minnesota offense. But the defense has been good all year, and it's never been less than good. And it's been great early in the year. There have been times this season where it looked special. And Minnesota's tough to beat at home. So if the Cowboys roll into Minnesota and they're the favorites to win, and they do win on the road against a good defensive team who's tough to play on the road, it gives you more evidence that they're actually an excellent team, maybe the best team in football, Stephen A. Smith. The Patriots haven't looked as good as they did earlier in the season recently either. They might be the best team in football. This would be more evidence.
Well, a couple of things. As an aside, away from football, it's hard to look through the screen and see and visualize you in all your glory. I'm not sure I like that haircut on you. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
Same haircut I always get.
I don't know. I don't know. Like a crew cut from the 80s. I don't know. We'll talk about it later. Let's get back to the football issue.
Got a lot of nerves talking about someone's hair. Go ahead.
You got the Dallas Cowboys, all right? Now, this is a team that's ranked 31st against the pass, Max. Yep. 31st against the pass. Here's the problem with that. Minnesota, that's the last thing you expect them to be able to do any damage with because, again, you don't have a running attack, you don't have a great offensive line, and you don't have, quote-unquote, great receivers, even though I like Stephon Diggs a lot. I'm wondering about his health. So because of that, I certainly don't expect anything from you from your running game. The combination of the two, if the Vikings are to have any chance in this game whatsoever, it's the fact that people believe they're playing with house money, because they're just not that good offensively. And as a result, minimal expectations. And because of those minimal expectations, they can turn around and play lights out and shock everybody else and catch the Dallas Cowboys sleeping. But I'm assuming that even though I'm disgusted with their fan base and I can't stand them, that the Cowboys themselves are not stupid or ignorant enough or arrogant enough to believe that they get to sit up there and take a pass and act like they've arrived when they haven't done anything in almost 22 years.
Look, I'm
assuming they'll be ready.
If you win 11 straight games in the NFL, you're really good. And that's what they're trying to do. That's what they're fixing to do, Stephen A. Smith. They're field goal favorites on the road. That's pretty solid. If you win 11 straight games, no mess-ups, no by chance the other team gets lucky and win, no sleeping on anyone, no quote-unquote trap games, you're really good. Any team that goes into Minnesota, I don't care how depleted the offense is, and beats the Vikings at Minnesota, that's a hell of a team. And that's these Cowboys, man. It's going to be, we both expect them to win. It's just, we expect them to win because we know they're good. I hate to say it, but it's true.
I don't want to hear from you anymore. I damn near don't want to hear from Molly because I can only imagine what she's going to say. But I'll say this. Go ahead, Molly. You want to sit up there and rave and throw on the pom-poms and rave about the Cowboys too?
I just want to know. I actually think the Vikings have a shot. This is potentially the toughest defense they faced. Only the Ravens has a higher rated defense right now in terms of who they face. This defense is legit.
Boy, I hope y'all are right, but I sincerely doubt it. I hope y'all are right, but I sincerely doubt it. This is one time I wish I wasn't right because I usually
always assuming the worst of us.
If they had Adrian Peterson, they'd have a better shot.
That's true. Yeah. Well, you really went out on a limb there, Max. You really did.
Hey, he was only averaging like a yard and a half a carry before he went out.
Speaking of, let's get into it. We are in rare form today. The Vikings will be without their Pro Bowl running back, but on the bright side, Adrian Peterson is ahead of schedule in his recovery from a full meniscus repair. Sources told ESPN earlier this month that Peterson could return on December 18th against the Colts or December 24th against the Packers. Should Peterson return this season, Stephen A?
Hell no. Hey, stay home, man. Collect your money, chill out, come back another time because obviously you know you're going to go on the downside of your career because you're over 30. You know what they say about running backs, that you have defied the odds in the past. I have no doubt that you can defy the odds again. But that's assuming you don't rush it and you put yourself in a position to come back 100%. I haven't heard any reports that have intimated that if Adrian Peterson comes back this year, he will be 100%. And I think that's exactly what he needs to be if indeed he is going to be that elite running back that we assume that he is, because we always assume that from Adrian Peterson because it's AP is AP, and that's just the way it goes. I think that you don't jeopardize that. This Vikings team, even with Adrian Peterson, with the other pieces it does not have at its disposal, I think they're a piece or two away on the offensive side of the ball, whether they have Adrian Peterson or not. I don't think that he should risk it because he would not be 100%. That offensive line is not fully loaded. They got a lot of work to do on that offensive line. Don't jeopardize your future. Don't jeopardize your career. Don't jeopardize the future Benjamins that are destined to come your way by trying to get something you ain't going to get this year anyway. Minnesota's not going to be better than Seattle. They are not going to be better than the Dallas Cowboys. I'm not willing to say they're going to be better than the Redskins or the Vikings or the Atlanta Falcons. Chill out, pump the brakes, stay home, collect the check, and come back another day when you're 100%. Don't do this now.
You're wrong. He'll never be the 100% Adrian Peterson that you're remembering from the past. If he's 80% of Adrian Peterson right now, and he has a chance to make the playoffs by coming back, he should come back. Now, I say I don't count someone else's money, but that's not true. Sometimes I do. In fact, I do a lot.
You do. Yes,
you do that a lot. Yes, I do.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
And Adrian Peterson's made a lot. And if he was a rookie or he had his whole career ahead of him, that'd be one thing. But he wants to chase a championship. He's a very competitive guy. Do you think the Sam Bradford trade was a mistake, Stephen A. Smith?
Do I think it was a mistake?
Yes.
No, I do not.
Okay,
no,
neither do I. And if you don't think it was a mistake, that's because you admire the fact that Minnesota looked at their roster and they said, this is a good team. And just because Bridgewater goes down, we can't give up on this season. And just because the going got rough doesn't mean you give up now. What's the problem with Minnesota? It's the offensive line. That's why Peterson was struggling even before he went out. But let's just from a kind of broader point of view, what's the problem? The running game. They really can't get that going. So play action, whatever, none of it's going to work. It's going to affect Bradford negatively, which is why, though he's not a great quarterback, he looks right now worse than he actually is. If you believe, and I do, and I think you do too, that Adrian Peterson is an upgrade, even 80% of Adrian Peterson is an upgrade, with the playoff berth still hanging in the balance, if you're the Vikings, you pushed your chips to the middle of the table this season, you don't stop now. And if you're Adrian Peterson and you have not won a Super Bowl and you're one of the greatest players who has ever lived, and he is, and you have a freakish superhuman ability to come back from injury, and he's demonstrated that in the past, then you take your shot while you have it, because there's no guarantee you will get a better shot. If he can come back and they're still in the playoff hunt, he should absolutely come back.
Couple of things. If I recollect, if my recollection serves me well, when Adrian Peterson got hurt a few years back, and he went down in that game against the Redskins, he never tried to come back. He was out for the rest of the season. I think it happened, but then again, that's really not a non-issue because it was like game 12, if I remember correctly, in the season. So he wasn't going to be able to come back from that. But what I'm saying is that entire offseason to work yourself out, not exposing yourself to a certain level of contact, et cetera, you got to remember, if he comes back, he's going to come back in the throes of action at the most heated time of the year, which is approaching the playoffs when he's not 100%. I don't think he should take that risk. I also don't think he should take that risk because this is the NFL, whether it's the no fun league, whether it's all about business or whatever the case may be, we all know they don't give a damn about much, particularly running backs. Get your paper, get yourself 100%, and then come back. And then you got to be reasonable about what kind of situation and circumstances he's coming back into, Max. If you had Dallas's offensive line, I might be prone to agree to some degree anyway, but he does not.
I get
He's
that
exposing
point.
himself to the same problems that he had before he went down.
You're looking at it from his point of view, from a football player's point of, or from a football perspective generally. Teams ask and fans ask players all the time to make irrational decisions about their future, to sacrifice their health in the present at the expense of their future. And in Adrian Peterson's case, that's why I think it is significant that he is the age he is, that he is likely to go into steep decline very soon, based on the whole history of the league and running backs in his career, that he has a chance here, given the level of that defense, and that the level the defense is capable of playing on, that if he can make the difference, a tipping point in the offense, that it can improve Sam Bradford, you never know. You win a couple games in the playoffs, you're looking at the championship game, at least in the conference. You never know. And so even if it's slightly irrational for his long-term money, I think in the present, a competitor like Adrian Peterson, one of the greatest who ever lived, that could be important enough to offset that. And one last thing. I heard you refer to him as AP. I agree with you. He should be called AP, Adrian Peterson. But he is called AD all day. And that is very confusing. Because on Twitter, when I'm trying to tweet about him,
But
I know
he's
if I
not
put...
all day right now.
Well, okay, fine. But if I put AD, will people know who I'm talking about? If I put AP, will they think I got it wrong? And I didn't know the difference? Let's get on the same page about this. It is AP or AD?
First of all, that's not a good question to ask of you in public, whether they know what you're talking about, because I sit across from you every day and I have a hard time deciphering what the hell you're talking about half the time. So it's not really good. I mean, come on now. Let's be clear. Let's be clear. Whatever, Molly. The point is, Max Kellerman, I get where you're coming from, but again, we go back to that offensive line. We go back to the working conditions under which he would be exposed to. We do have a license to not just look at what it was when you were playing the first couple of weeks of the season. We have a right to look at what has transpired with the Minnesota Vikings over the last 8 or 9 weeks and deduce what might be best and what might not be. And that's where I'm coming from with the AP.
Fair enough. Dallas is favored by 3, and they are 5-0 on the road. But there's another one I'm more excited about this weekend, gentlemen. If you had one game to win, which quarterback would you rather have, Big Ben or Eli Manning? That debate is next. And later in the show, Ezekiel Elliott has carried the Cowboys to 10 straight wins. But is he the NFL MVP so far this season? There's a poll out that says he's not even in the top 3. We'll get into it.
The first choice in the 2004 NFL Draft, the San Diego Chargers select Eli Manning. San Diego Chargers and the New York Giants have exchanged their draft picks. The New York Giants have a Manning.
Are you a Steeler?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
With the 11th pick, the Pittsburgh Steelers select Ben Roethlisberger.
Ben Roethlisberger has 2 rings. Eli Manning has 2 rings.
And Eli Manning and the Giants have finished off the Patriots for the second time in 4 years.
Throws it back corner of the end zone. Santonio with a touchdown. The Pittsburgh Steelers have won the Super Bowl.
He doesn't fear those moments. He embraces them. It's part of what makes him who he is.
We've seen this historically from Eli Manning. He walks in that huddle and gets it done.
Throws one down to the right side. Touchdown, Giants. Bam, just like that.
He throws to the end zone. It is caught. It is caught.
He's our guy. I wouldn't trade him for anyone else.
Eli Manning and Big Ben go all the way back to 2004, where they were drafted 1st and 11th overall, respectively, the only draft class to produce 2 quarterbacks to win multiple Super Bowls. So Sunday, they're having a little reunion tour in the Steel City. Here are both quarterbacks on the matchup.
Obviously, the same draft, the same years. We played this game for a long time. Other than a mutual respect, I respect him and his game and what he's brought to the game of football.
You always want your kind of your quarterback draft class to be well thought of and respected down the road. I think you kind of hear about the '83 class. You hear about certain years you want to kind of be thrown in that mix someday. And so but besides that, I haven't seen him a whole lot. Outside of football, off the field or pass, haven't crossed too much. So, but again, I have a lot of respect for him and his game.
Max?
Yeah.
This one's serious.
Yeah.
All fandom aside.
Yes.
If you had one game to win, who would you rather have, Big Ben or Eli?
With one game?
One game on the line.
That one's easy. I thought it was going to be a hard one. Like, figure out a way to really argue that Eli's better than Big Ben. Then I have my work cut out for me. With one game on the line? Is this a trick question? It's Eli Manning. not just over Ben Roethlisberger, over every quarterback who ever lived. It's Eli Manning. And don't take my word for it. Stephen A. Smith, are you familiar with the work of Nate Silver of 538.com?
Yes, I'm very familiar with him. He had a good year, 2008, maybe to a good degree, 2012.
A good year?
Not so good in 2016.
Excuse me.
Well,
Nate Silver had a better year than anyone else in 2016 when he told everyone.
Well, everybody was off for. That's like that. What was that saying? Everybody was off for 2016.
Gave Trump a 1 to 5% chance. Nate Silver warned everyone there's a lot of volatility in the polls.
Here we go.
He has about a 1 in 3 chance to win. If you were paying attention to Nate Silver, you would know much more about what's going on than if you were paying attention to anyone else. And Nate Silver did a study last year.
I like Nate Silver.
Right here. I have it right here.
Great. That's
here. See?
Okay,
Here's
go
the
ahead.
evidence.
Got it, the study.
The most clutch postseason quarterback of all time. And he went through his various brilliant methodology that helps predict like every Senate seat ever. And he came to the conclusion that the answer was Eli Manning. But it was Eli Manning by so much he didn't trust his methodology. He said there's no way that Eli could, talking about postseason quarterbacks, could be that much more clutch than everyone who's ever lived. It doesn't make sense. Let me redo my methodology to siphon out all the Trent Dilfers of the world, good quarterbacks who raise their game, but not really franchise-level quarterbacks. Let me redo it and see what happens then. And when he did it, to be fair, it was much closer. And Joe Montana was the second most clutch quarterback of all time. And Eli Manning was still the first. He is the most clutch quarterback in the history of the NFL playoffs. And by some ways of looking at it, it's not close. Ben Roethlisberger, way down the list. Last I checked, he was 15. I don't know how much that changed from last year. So all the chips on the line, one game, you made it easy for me, Eli Manning.
Max Kellerman, first of all, we respectfully disagree. And I'm going to say respectfully because I love me some Eli Manning. I'm a native New Yorker. He's a 2-time Super Bowl champion. I ain't got nothing but love
me some Roethlisberger, too, by the way.
But I got you. But let me get to this point because you appreciate numbers. Here's the deal. Do you know that Ben Roethlisberger has thrown the football in his professional career 5,796 times?
Very happy for him.
How many times Eli Manning has thrown the football?
No, not offhand.
6,640.
A lot more responsibility,
huh? Football. Wait a minute. He's thrown the football nearly 1,000 times more than Big Ben Roethlisberger. Now, I understand that Eli Manning has had great moments, no question about it. But at the same time, let's also understand he's led the league in interceptions 3 times. Let's also understand that he's thrown for 16 or more interceptions in a season 6 times, whereas Big Ben Roethlisberger has only done that 3 times. Let's be clear about something here. When you look at Eli Manning, he does tend to be more mistake prone. That is a fact.
Except when it matters most.
Obviously, the numbers prove it. I asked you not to interrupt me. Did I not just ask you that? I thought I asked you that, right? So the point that I'm trying to tell you is this. Big Ben Roethlisberger has been to 3 Super Bowls. Eli's been to 2. They both got 2 Super Bowl championships. Eli is a big-time quarterback. I'm not taking anything away from him. I got a lot of love for him. I had the pleasure of interviewing him on several occasions when I was working at ESPN New York. The dude's a special person, and he's a 2-time Super Bowl champion. But if I got to bet my money on one game, I'm going to go with Big Ben Roethlisberger because I think Big Ben Roethlisberger can do the things that Eli can do with his arm. He does more with his legs. He does more to evade oncoming rushers. I'm just saying he's Big Ben Roethlisberger. He can shrug you off. I dare say that I think at times he has come across as a bit more dependable than Eli.
Yeah, well, over the course of a season, you have a good case. But for one game, I want to talk about the Green Bay Packers for a second. Who's the greatest quarterback in their history, would you say?
For me?
Yeah.
For me, it's Aaron Rodgers. Right. It ain't Brett Favre.
Tough to beat Aaron Rodgers at Lambeau, right? In the playoffs, Eli went into Lambeau and beat Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs. Kind of like the way he went into Lambeau and beat Brett Favre in the playoffs. Kind of like
I've seen Big Ben whirl into Baltimore and beat the Ravens. I've seen him go into hostile confines and win football games.
Lambeau in the playoffs.
I'm just telling you.
Did you ever see him play Tom Brady and beat him twice and outplay him twice and win?
I've seen him outplay Tom
while
Brady.
we're on the subject. Bart Starr is one of only 5 quarterbacks to win 2 Super Bowl MVPs. I know Ben Roethlisberger's won 2 championships. Bart Starr is one. Terry Bradshaw's another. Joe Montana is another. Tom Brady is another. And Eli Manning is another. 2 Super Bowl MVPs. Once by beating Tom Brady in an 18-0 season to that point in a game that was supposed to be the coronation of the greatest team in the history of American team sports. And Eli comes through and wins the day.
Hold on. Pump the brakes, Giants fan. As a Giants fan, now, I just, before we did the show today, I was chilling out on Good Morning America with my man Michael Strahan. I'm sure you remember that name, don't you? You're gonna sit here and talk to you're gonna sit here and act like Strahan and that pass rush that was all over Tom Brady all night long. That's Eli Manning, the reason they won that Super Bowl instead of that Giants defense. I'm just saying, I'm not taking anything away from Eli Manning, but I'm saying you're gonna sit here and act like Eli Manning's the reason they won that Super Bowl. That's where you going?
Roethlisberger won the Super Bowl by himself. According to the voters, Eli had more to do with his 2 Super Bowl wins than Roethlisberger, which is why he got 2 Super Bowl MVPs. I don't give a damn what the voters say. That's the difference between me and you. I could care less what they say. Let me tell you something right now. I watched the Patriots and that high-powered offense with Randy Moss and Tom Brady all day long. You watched the throw
and
to
I saw what that Giants do. Hold on. I saw what that Giants defense did to that offense. Don't talk to me about Eli.
Did you see Eli Manning with 5 dudes on him throw the pass to Tyree?
That the guy caught on his helmet? Tyree?
By the way, that wasn't the game winner. That was the touchdown pass to Plex. That was the game winner.
I know that. Who was basically wide open from 5 yards away.
You want to argue that Roethlisberger's had the better career?
Hold on. Was that pass from Eli? I'm sorry, was that pass I'm talking about the Eli touchdown pass to Plexico Burst.
Yes,
was that better than Big Ben Roethlisberger to Santonio Holmes?
No.
Was that better?
Santonio Holmes, that was one of the great passes of all time. Below the Manningham and Tyree passes, but one of the great of all time.
You just brought up a great pass.
If you want to argue,
and now you want to dismiss it.
You want to argue Roethlisberger's career over the course of his season, anything. If you're talking about for one game, the answer over everyone who ever lived is Eli Manning. People don't have to deal with that.
I respectfully disagree. I don't have to deal with that. Regardless of what your eyeballs, your shirt, and your new crew cut haircut tells me to do. I don't have to concede that. I don't have to concede that, Max Kellerman. I'm going to hold on to my belief. That's what I believe.
Okay, Stephen A., I have one question for you, and then we'll end on this. You said Big Ben Roethlisberger's more dependable, correct?
Well, I think that he's more dependable.
Okay, yes or no? Did you say that yes or no?
In a minute.
Yes.
You said yes. But you're parsing it like that. Yes, go ahead.
How many games has Eli Manning missed? How many starts?
Eli Manning is Mr. Dependable. He never misses a game.
Never. And what's the best ability? Availability.
But that's not what I was talking about.
No time, sorry.
But that's not what I was talking about. That's not what I was talking about. But that's okay. Two Giants fans. I got it. My bad. My bad. Two Giants fans. My bad. My bad.
We want to hear from you guys on Twitter. If you had one game to win, which quarterback would you like to have? Eli Manning or Ben
one journalist up here.
We'll share those results a little later in the show. Sorry, spitting facts. Coming up next, Karl-Anthony Towns outdueled Porzingis, but which big man would you take moving forward? You may be surprised to hear these answers, trust me. And later, the Seahawks haven't forgotten about last year. You don't want to miss what Richard Sherman has to say about the Panthers' struggles this season. Hall of Fame coach Tony Dungy has done extensive legwork in the promoting of hiring of minority coaching candidates, and he spoke on the state of coaching at a luncheon promoting NBC's partnership with Thursday Night Football, saying, quote, so many owners don't know what they're looking for. I've talked to people who have said, recommend a coach to me. And when I say, well, what are you looking for? They say, well, I don't know. Recommend someone who is good. Very interesting. We welcome in Bill Poley into the show. Spent 7 years, of course, with Tony Dungy. Yes, won a Super Bowl together. Thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure.
We appreciate it. Help us out here. Do you think this is a reason why there's so few minority head coaches in the NFL?
No, it's one of the reasons. There's a number of reasons. On the one hand, Tony's exactly right. Owners don't know what they're looking for. On the other hand, you have agents out there who are pushing coaches and getting in league with people in the media trying to push coaches who may not even fit or even be qualified. Third, you have all kinds of speculation that takes place. The internet, for example, had a story a couple of weeks ago that Josh McDaniels was not on the list compiled by a committee that I belong to. First of all, the list hasn't been promulgated, and Josh McDaniels was on it. So it's that kind of nonsense that floats around that owners and club presidents are susceptible to. The other thing is that there is the feeling, largely I think created by the media, that you have to be a coordinator in order to be qualified to be a head coach. That's not true. In fact, there have been many head coaches, including my mentor, Marv Levy, who was not a coordinator, and good ones. So there are a number of things that are taken into consideration. Fortunately, this year we have a number of, not a great number, but a number of really good minority coaches who may be available to fill needs. But in the end, it's the owner and the people around him who make the decision. And oftentimes the football people don't have the loudest voice in the room, which is, in my opinion, a mistake.
I think it does have something to do with it for a very kind of stupid reason. And this happened, sports you would think would be run much more efficiently. But for years we see that wasn't the case. How slow was baseball to accept analytics, and now every single team relies on them heavily because they work. The early adopters of analytics and who employed them enjoyed great success and a huge advantage until the slow ones caught on, right? So it's not always run efficiently. And one of the ways I think sports is inefficient, particularly the NFL, is that people cast in their minds. So if the owners don't know what they're looking for, they cast. I want a guy, that coach is good. I want someone who reminds me of him. Go get me someone who reminds me of him. And sometimes it's as simple as that's the way they look. I really think that plays into it. They remind him of a guy who just had success. And only recently do you hear things like, hey, you know who Jameis Winston reminds me of? Ben Roethlisberger, right? Mm-hmm. And not just when you saw an African-American quarterback, another African-American quarterback, because the casting people do in their minds often is simply the way they look, and what people see oftentimes is race. So I think it's going to be an ongoing and slow process, gradual process, but the more minority, quote unquote, candidates you see and coaches you see in the league, I think that will have a kind of ripple effect in increasing the speed at which this stuff happens.
Well, I want to chime in here by first saying that, I've, for years, Max Molly, y'all may not know this, but ever since this man, Bill Polian, has been working here, it's been a treasure for me, because every time I'm around him, he teaches me more and more about the game of football, and I've always appreciated that about him, and I want to thank you for being on the show. The thing that I love when I talk to Bill Polian is that, like many, I have preconceived notions. When I think about the paucity of African Americans that happen to be coaching in the sport of professional football, I hearken back to a quote that was attributed to Bill Walsh years ago, in terms of the need for individuals to ingratiate themselves with us so we can get to know them better and things of that nature. When I talk to a Bill Polian, I'm talking to somebody that I view as an executive and as a teacher who is knowledgeable about his profession and knows what's needed. Bill, I don't know if we can necessarily get that from a lot of guys that are or have been in your positions or are in your positions. It seems to me like there's this penchant to bring people on board, either that they're personally comfortable with or that they believe the owners would be comfortable with. How much credence do you give to that thinking, if any at all?
Well, there's some to it. There's a lot of truth to all of these statements. I don't, by the way, think people necessarily cast for race, for or against. The bottom line is that there are usually more than one person involved in the decision. It's rare when it's only one person. George Young had that, I had that in Indianapolis, but it's rare. So you get people who really don't understand what the game on the field is all about and have perhaps marketing concerns, have perhaps image concerns, have perhaps preconceived notions based on what they read or hear in the media. And they bring into the mix and into the interview process things that really are extraneous. And oftentimes you don't get to the important stuff. Mm-hmm. And so two things have to happen, in my opinion. You're not going to change the makeup of who makes the decision. That's the owner's call. But we need to do a better job, as Bill Walsh did with the original Stanford project many, many years ago.
Yes.
We need to get minority coaches prepared for the interviews. That's the first thing we need to do. And that the committee on which I serve is working on that. We need to get them prepared for the interviews so they know that they have to present staff and they have to present good and solid staffs, that they know they have to, what questions they have to answer. They know they have to talk about the style of football they want. They know they have to set the vision for how they want the
Why
team
don't they
to
know
play.
that now, do you think?
Well, because
Yeah, that's
assistant
where I was
coaches
going.
and coordinators don't think that way. They're not in that mode. They're getting a game plan ready. They're not thinking about what my staff is going to be, so we got to help them do that.
Why is it that the white candidates don't need that same help?
They do.
They do.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone
sure.
across
Absolutely,
the
they
board.
do. Everyone across the board.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
White candidates interview just as poorly as black candidates or
So in other words,
Hispanic.
because there are fewer minority candidates to begin with who are getting the opportunity,
That's the second
it's
part
even
of it.
more important that they are fully prepped for the opportunity.
That's the second part of it. We don't have enough minority quarterback coaches. We don't have enough minority coordinators. That's the second part of the puzzle.
Right.
And when we get that, and we're working toward it,
Bill.
we're trying to get the pipeline full.
How concerning is
What
it that-
resistance? I'm sorry. I wanted to know what resistance do you believe actually exists to that happening? What you just said about getting more minority quarterback coaches, more minority coordinators, etc. What's the impediment in that regard?
Number one, the growth process. They got to start at the college level. That's where most coaches start. Secondly, we got to get more quality control people on the offensive side of the ball who are minorities. That's where they start. Fill the pipeline, and at the other end, candidates will emerge.
So is it fair for somebody like me to look at the paucity of African American coaches in the sport of college football, particularly on the D1 level, and say that is contributing to the lack of black coaches on the NFL level? You're
Again,
not getting
to some
them.
degree, that's true.
You're not addressing that issue in college.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you feel that the Rooney Rule was the kind of necessary first step in order for this pipeline issue to even be an issue? In other words, first you need to make sure that minority candidates are even looked at, or has this been done backwards?
No, without question, the Rooney Rule was the most significant advancement in sports. Forget about just football, in sports for minorities. And it's been followed and replicated by other sports. Commissioner Tagliabue should be in the Hall of Fame for that alone. That alone. Yeah. So we had to have that. Now we got to grow the pipeline. That's really what it's all about.
The next step.
The next step, yes.
No question.
Well,
but regardless of race, I find it concerning that owners don't know what they want in itself. What were you going to say, Stephen A.?
No, I was saying that in corporate America, what you have is a situation where it's mandated that there's a certain number of African Americans in particular professions that get accorded opportunities. I'm glad the Rooney Rule is in place. Please don't get me wrong. But I'm saying that the mandate that exists in corporate America, that doesn't seem applicable with the NFL as it pertains to the Rooney Rule. Do you have any issue with that whatsoever, Bill?
I think the Rooney Rule is great. It's been expanded to general managers, and it's been expanded to other front office positions, including for women. And I think that's the precursor to everything else. Once that's in place, and it is in place and has been for a long time, then we begin to take steps to make sure that the pipeline is full. It's not right now, to be very honest with you. It's not.
Really appreciate you joining us and your insight.
Thank
on
you,
this.
sir.
My pleasure.
Bill.
We'll argue about the MVP some other time.
Yes.
Yes, we will.
We
yes,
know who
we
your
will.
vote is. We'll get into that later. Thanks so much.
Pretty good one in studio during the commercial break.
They have the best
Damn
record
Cowboys.
in the NFL, but neither rookie is in the top 3 of an MVP poll. Are Dak and Zeke getting the credit they deserve? And later in the show, Karl-Anthony Towns with the better game last night, while Porzingis came away with the win. But which big man would you want moving forward? We get into it.
Welcome back to First Take, presented by Bass Pro Shops.
Play fake and a boot to the right. Witten's going out the end zone. Prescott keeps. Pylon. Touchdown. They give the ball to Elliott, and he bangs it left guard and through. Touchdown, Cowboys.
A lot of debate this this year as to who deserves the NFL MVPs. ESPN put together a panel of 12 experts that took a shot at who the coveted award goes to, with 5 weeks of valuable play still left, of course. Here's how the poll stands as we head into Week 13 tonight. Number 1, Derek Carr. Number 2, Matt Ryan. Rounding out the top 3, 1, Tom Brady. 4 is Ezekiel Elliott, and 5, Dak Prescott. Matthew Stafford falls just out of the top 5. Stephen A. Smith, are Dak and Zeke getting the respect they deserve?
Yes, they are. They're getting the respect they deserve. They were mentioned in the conversation, weren't they? Weren't they mentioned as top 5 MVP candidates, weren't they? What's the problem? I mean, be happy with what the hell you got. You just got onto the scene. You're a rookie. Your breath smell like Similac. You're wet behind the ears. Be happy. If you're the real deal, your time will come. Now, I've been very, very impressed with both of them. I don't want to deny that. I mean, Dak is flat out balling. He's not turning the ball over. 18 touchdowns, just 2 interceptions on the year. A QBR about 83. He's been incredibly impressive. I'm looking at Ezekiel Elliott. He's got nearly 1,199 yards rushing, to be exact, about 4.9 yards per carry, okay? And nobody else is registering that amount of yards per carry when Ezekiel, when Ezekiel Elliott is running the football. So they deserve their respect. But look at Derek Carr, throw that football and look at the numbers that he's put up. Look at the fact that Zach Elliott has only thrown for 300 yards plus twice this season, 2 times in the last 3 weeks to be specific. Look at the fact that Matt Ryan, Matty Ice, and what he's been doing with that Atlanta Falcons offense, particularly that pass and attack. And of course, Tom Brady. I mean, I've been trying to tell you, missing 4 games but still coming back and doing what he did. There's nothing to talk about here. Zach and Ezekiel Elliott, they are in the top 5. They deserve to be in the top 5 for league MVP, but not necessarily at 1 and 2. I think that's very accurate and appropriate.
It is inappropriate. Dak Prescott is clearly the MVP at this moment. Now look, Derek Carr has been fantastic, so is Matt Ryan, so is Matthew Stafford, if we're honest about it. Tom Brady has no business in this conversation.
No.
He has as many losses as the number 2 and 3 quarterbacks on the team combined, and the loss came from the 3rd stringer, not the 2nd stringer. Okay, his one-loss percentage is much worse, actually, than the 2nd string quarterback on his same team. And having missed 4 games, which is at this point a third of the season, he better be so much better than everyone else, like Dak, for instance, that it's not even close. Otherwise, how do you make up that value? Oh, but wait a minute. Who's leading the league in QBR at this moment? Dak Prescott. So on a per-game basis, he is outplaying Tom Brady according to the most sophisticated metric we have. It's not perfect, but it's better than all the others. On a per-game basis, he's outplaying him, and he's played 4 more games. Now, Dak has 2 things going against him. 1, he's a rookie, and you hate on him because he's a rookie. You just did it earlier. Oh, he'll have plenty of time. These other guys have paid their dues. And 2, he's playing behind a great offensive line with a great running back. And because they're run-heavy, people say, well, that's the reason he's doing so well. And then cite things like how many times has he thrown for over 300 yards? It's because of the running back. What Dak is like Tom Brady is a young player, playing on an excellent team, not making mistakes, big on 3rd down, and clutch when you need him. The highest QBR, has played on every game. His team has the best record, and you're going to hold it against him because he has good teammates and because he's a rookie. But he's the MVP right now.
First of all, Max Kellerman, you said Zach had the highest QBR. That's around 83, right?
84. Right? I think Brady's at 83 right now, and he's at 84.
Yeah.
Brady's 83 and 82.
I think that if the computer here is wrong, I apologize, but it says that Tom Brady, his QBR is at 89. I just want to point that out.
Excuse me
That's
a second. Sabino! Sorry, nothing.
I think it's 89. That's number 1. That's number 1. Tom Brady has missed 4 games, right?
Correct.
Did you say 4 games?
Yes.
4 games, Deflategate, the suspension. I mean, I might not remember that. Are you sure? Is it 4 games? I mean, it's 4, right? 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
4 games
in a
he
season
missed, right?
with 16 of them, in which only, what, now for the Cowboys, 11 have been played?
Could you just answer my question, yes or no, when I ask you a question instead of one of your soliloquies? Did he miss 4 games, yes or no? It's 4 games, right?
He did, yes.
But he has just the same amount of touchdown passes as Dak. 18 touchdowns. Just 1 interception, by the way. Higher QBR. And by the way, he don't have Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield or that offensive line.
He's not playing on a good team, Tom Brady,
you can sit up there and say what you want to say, but I'm just breaking it down to you,
right
baby.
now. Tom Brady has an 85 and Dak has an 86.
It says 89. I'm just telling y'all right here. It says 85.
I'm just checking the site called ESPN.com.
ESPN Research and Molly got it at 86 to 85.
Okay.
And you know what that does?
Pro Football Reference is wrong. Pro Football Reference is wrong.
That factors
all.
Go with the worldwide leader.
QBR factors in the touchdowns and the interceptions and all that.
Listen, I know America might find this hard to believe, but I actually choose to use the eye test more than Beetlejuice himself, Max Kellerman. I don't understand it. I really can't get over that. I don't understand for the life of me why this man won't use the eyes that boy has on his face. I don't get it. But it is what it is. I'm just telling you, man. It's the same amount of touchdowns.
Beetlejuice on television by George Jefferson.
You know what? I'm almost 50 though, bro. I'm not mad about it. I'm good.
What's my excuse? Is that the idea?
What's your excuse? That's what it is. That's what it is.
It's a good point.
But here's the deal. 89, same amount of touchdowns. The man's won. He's lost us the game. I'm not worried about it. Zeke and Dak are right where they're supposed to be.
Okay, George, let's move on. And Beetlejuice, we won't talk about your former MVP candidate.
No, that can't stick. That can't stick.
I'll do the funky chicken if you want me to, George Jefferson. Don't get me get started.
Let's talk
I'm coming to join you.
The 5 and 6 Colts. They stood a game back in the AFC South with 5 to play. Colts players know that to pass the Titans 6-6 and the division-leading Houston Texans 6-5, they need a win streak. Tight end Dwayne Allen telling the Indy Star, quote, "We understand. We have to run the table, point blank. In order to have a realistic chance, we have to run the table." I guess I'll call you Max.
Yeah.
Will they win the division?
Yeah, I think they will. I think, I picked Andrew Luck to win the MVP before the season started, and I thought that's partly because he's on a very flawed team. They're even worse than I thought they would be. And he would somehow, through his brilliant play, elevate them. He's entering his physical prime now. He'd figure out a way by hook or by crook to get him to the playoffs, and I still think he's going to do that. He's the best player in the division, and I really believe, actually, if you equalized everything else, right? I think he's the best player in football. I can't prove it because his defense is terrible. His offensive line is no good. He doesn't really have a lot of offensive weapons. He's on one of the most talentless teams in the game. So there's no way to really prove it. But if you could give me my choice of players in the NFL, one guy, build a team around him, I'll take Andrew Luck. And when you look at the schedule, it's not exactly murderer's row. It's not a tough division. He's the best player in it. He's going to have a superhuman effort to get them there, but I think he's going to get them there, Stephen A. I think he's that special a player.
Well, Max Kellerman, you brought this on yourself. You deserve the misery associated with this when you picked Andrew Luck as your league MVP, because no one questioned the greatness of Andrew Luck. Even though he could be haphazard at times, we know it's because of the absence of protection, because Grigson still hasn't succeeded in giving him an offensive line in 5 years and all of this other stuff. We got that about Andrew Luck. The one person that was hard-headed about all of this was you, because you refused to look at the pieces around him and fully recognize what this man was working with or not working with. The Indianapolis Colts are not a very good team. Their defense is horrific. They're ranked 28th. They're ranked 30th in yards allowed. They're ranked 30th against the pass, 23rd against the run. Their offensive line is highly suspect. Their running game, even though Frank Gore is a rough rider, you know what? He's over 30. We understand there's but so much you could expect from him. So everything is on Andrew Luck and those receivers. I look at Andrew Luck, and I don't see the Colts winning the AFC South. I think even though Brock Osweiler isn't the answer, I think overall as a team, Houston is better. I think the Titans are on the come up with Mariota and the crew. Plus they've got runners, particularly in DeMarco Murray. I got more faith in them, and I have little to no faith in the Colts outside of Andrew Luck.
No,
so I don't see them running the table. And they're two road games at Minnesota and at Oakland. They ain't winning those games.
I don't know.
No.
I mean, Minnesota's a very tough defense, but we just got done. Let's see how Minnesota looks against Dallas, but they don't have much offense
Dallas
right now.
is different than Indy.
And Oakland has been amazing, mainly because Derek Carr, another great offensive line, by the way, and some weapons. Derek Carr comes through under pressure for them, but they haven't been outscoring opponents by a whole bunch. Their point differential doesn't say they're an elite team. Derek Carr's performance in the fourth quarter makes them an elite team, but Andrew Luck can do the same for his. If you look at the schedules, Tennessee has to play Denver and at KC. Houston has a game at Green Bay. But when you look at the Colts, at the Jets, big deal. Houston, all right, at Minnesota, we'll see what that is. You know, the Cowboys will be somewhat of a litmus test. The Cowboys should win that game. If Minnesota wins, I may reevaluate. But I don't see Minnesota as insurmountable for them. At Oakland is a tough game, but again, fundamentally, the Raiders aren't a great team. They're a good team with a great quarterback. I'm saying Andrew Luck's a great quarterback and may be able to match that. And Jacksonville, I don't see Murderer's Row there.
I'm not proclaiming that any of them will run the table. But at this moment, they already have an edge over Indy in the win-loss column. Yep. And I see them both, all three of them practically, losing at least a couple of more games. That still gives them the edge over Indy. To me, in order for Indy to be more successful, I think over the last 5 games, they're going to have to go at least 4-1. I don't see that happening.
Let me ask you something. If Luck plays out of his mind and leads them to the playoffs, is he an MVP candidate for you?
No.
You don't think they're going to make the playoffs?
No.
You acknowledge they have no defense. You acknowledge they have no offense. But if he somehow gets them over the hump, he's still not the MVP. We're in the conversation.
I'm sorry. Are you asking me a rhetorical question that you want me to echo to the audience, or do you need to be reminded of my position myself?
Little from column A, little from column B.
I am telling you what I told you before the season began. Andrew Luck would not be an MVP candidate because his team would stink. They wouldn't make the playoffs, and everybody would be looking at Grigson and Pagano and whether or not they needed to stay, as opposed to the greatness of Andrew Luck because of the pieces around him. That's the bottom line.
Andrew Luck is in danger. You know, if they give him a defense one of these days, he can go down as one of the all-time greats, and if they don't, he's a souped-up Archie Manning.
But let's just let it go. Can we just let it go with the MVP conversation, though, for this season? Let's just let it go. Let's just bury it.
Let it go.
Let's dead it.
Let it go.
Okay, thank you.
Dead it. Look at Molly.
No.
Look at Molly. Dead it. Is that right?
Let me wait till the end of the season.
You.
Make the playoffs.
Excuse me.
Make the playoffs, Luck.
Excuse me.
Coming up next, LeBron James blocked the Warriors from back-to-back championships, and he now has a new honor to go with that. We will tell you what it is after the break. First Take, stay here.
You're watching First Take, presented by Bass Pro Shops.
After leading his hometown Cavs to their first championship in franchise history, LeBron James was named Sportsperson of the Year by Sports Illustrated. He also won the award in 2012 and joins Tiger Woods as the only 2-time winner. Stephen A., your reaction?
Well, first of all, he deserves it. To bring a title back to Cleveland, the city of Cleveland and Northeast Ohio for the first time since 1964 in any professional sport, that was an historic accomplishment, no doubt. But it's also something that he deserves so much credit for because it's what he came back to do. He accomplished the mission. There was always adversity along the way. But I think that when you look at an award like this, it's not just for your accomplishments on the court. It's who you are in its totality. You're going to have critics out there who believe that LeBron James, they're going to question his authenticity. They're going to question, how real he is or whatever the case may be, because that's just what critics do. But what they're failing to realize if they do that is truly appreciating the impact and the magnitude of the impact that he has. This is not just a guy that restored faith and restored us, just resurrected and revitalized the sports town. This is a guy that had money poured into the economy. This is a guy that's facilitating kids and inner city youth getting an education because through his foundation, he's facilitating thousands of kids ultimately being able to receive the education. And no matter what you want to say about him, no matter what you think about him, no matter what people will try to come forth and say about him, in the end, you must judge two things: A, his deeds, and two, the undeniable impact that it has. This guy is a role model. When we look at guys and how they conduct themselves on far too many occasions, we see the wrong kind of stories. A lot of them are out there doing the right things, but rarely have you seen a global iconic figure of this magnitude in LeBron James, who has taken it upon himself to tackle the issues that he has tackled, to take the positions that he has taken, to be public with it, to open himself up to scrutiny because of it, and to be willing to do so anyway. So for him to receive this award, I think it's incredibly special. I think he deserves it. And I think it's just another, example of why he is considered the best on the planet. Just overall, we should all be proud of him. But as a black man, I'm specifically and very, very much so proud of him, because when you think about a sports model, a role model in the world of sports, particularly one coming from the community from whence he comes from, is just a great, great thing to see. It really is.
I have a couple of things to say here. I think you covered the importance of his social impact. And I've always thought about LeBron, when you have that kind of talent, oftentimes it winds up isolating the individual. And LeBron has always used, from a young age, it seems to me, his talent to uplift those around him. He hasn't allowed it to isolate him. It even comes out in his play. As he was coming up, it's like Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan had a baby, right? And that turns some people off, because he wasn't the killer that Kobe was or that Jordan was in quite the same way. And it turns some people off because he came up so small in Miami in the finals in those fourth quarters. And they thought, like, well, that ship has sailed on LeBron. I just want to say, I want to make it a little bit about LeBron, the player here. And for the haters of LeBron James, and there are a lot out there, and maybe it's because he's a roadblock for your team, you're a Warriors fan or something like that. I get that. That's okay. You can hate on him for that. But I mean for everyone else. It's weird how we develop these allegiances to certain athletes out of market. They don't play for our team. They're just stars. And we hate on others. Like, who knows why? They rub you the wrong way, or they come up small in the finals, or you think they get too much attention on the way up, or you're a Kobe fan and you don't like LeBron at a certain point starting to take his shine. Whatever that is that has you hating on LeBron, again, unless he's a roadblock, you're a Warriors fan or something like that, just give it up. Don't do it, because there's no future in front of him. And the main thing is, you're just hurting yourself. I've experienced this. When I was a kid, there were athletes I hated on irrationally. We all have this as sports fans. And one day, you know what happens? They're not there anymore. And you missed it. You didn't get to enjoy it. I just want to talk to the irrational LeBron haters out there, especially the younger people who haven't experienced like a generation of athletes yet. Enjoy this. Don't hate on the guy. Try to get over it. Don't front on him, because the only person you're hurting is yourself. This guy is amazing.
Well, let me close it by saying this, Max. The reason why you bring up one's blackness in my instance is that we saw Tiger Woods as a two-time winner under there. Tiger Woods is the greatest golfer I've ever seen. He's probably the greatest ever. He's accomplished tremendous things. He was also an individual that publicly tried to disassociate himself from his own blackness. And that's something that resonates with the black community. I'm not asking you that. I'm telling you. LeBron James never tried to do that. Not one time. Mm-hmm. He is unapologetically himself. He is somebody that embraces himself, his culture. He remembers where he comes from. And that's the level of pride that somebody like me can sit on national television and fully appreciate. I thank him for that. Nobody's perfect. Mm-hmm. And I'm quite sure there are things that I'll be critical about him watching his basketball play. But make no mistake about it, I have profound respect and admiration and appreciation for what he means to basketball and what he means to our community and what he means to this world as a global sports iconic figure. This is a special, special man.
It is irrational to feel any way else about LeBron. It's not rational.
I heard you. Don't hurt yourself. We're telling those people out there. And unlike our earlier MVP debate, this one, absolutely a no-brainer. I want to stay in the association now, though, guys. Two of the NBA's best young stars each put on a show last night in Minnesota. Last year's #1 overall pick, Karl-Anthony, run this town, scored 47 points and posted 18 rebounds, while the #4 overall pick from 2015, Kristaps Porzingis, had 29 points and 8 rebounds. Hotline Zing squad. got the best of Towns as the Knicks pulled out the 106-104 victory. Max, who would you rather have moving forward, Towns or Porzingis?
The answer is Kristaps Porzingis.
Really?
Now, Karl-Anthony Towns is a better player right now, all that stuff. I'll leave that to you, Stephen A., if you want to argue that. Here's the bottom line about Kristaps Porzingis. He is the kind of player that in a couple of years, the Eastern Conference going into every single offseason, every single GM in the Eastern Conference is going to be faced with the same question. How do we deal with Porzingis? He is 7'3" and can shoot the three this year. It's only his second season at a 40% clip. He can play defense. He can control the paint. He can step out on guys. I mean, he can close out on shooters. He can put the ball on the floor against any big man, any center, facing up. He can do all kinds of things that no one who's ever lived at that height can do. No one who has ever lived at that height can do. And Karl-Anthony Towns, amazing overall talent, the whole thing. And strategically, I get it. He's a souped-up Draymond Green, way souped up. And the Western Conference is going to have to deal with him. But Kristaps Porzingis is going to be a mismatch for everyone he plays for the rest of his career. And I think the only thing stopping him from being the dominant force in the NBA one day is health. If he can stay healthy, it's his world.
Well, listen. First of all, I appreciate you acknowledging he's not better than Karl-Anthony Towns yet, number one. Number two, Kristaps Porzingis is somebody, listen, I would jump all over Phil Jackson when he drafted the guy, but it's because I had never seen him, and Phil Jackson was talking about how he's a project for 3 or 4 years. So people thought I was attacking the player, and I wasn't doing any such thing. I was simply going by Phil Jackson's words that it's going to take 3 or 4 years for this guy to develop, and I was like, who the hell said the Knicks got 3 or 4 years? That was what I was attacking. But having said all of that, let's be clear. Karl-Anthony Towns is a stud. He is 7 feet. It ain't like he's some 6-foot guard or something like that. Yeah, Porzingis is 7'3", but Karl-Anthony Towns is 7 feet. He can play with his back to the basket. Porzingis really can't. He can shoot. He can get his shot off, no question about it. I love the fact that Porzingis also blocks shots, but Karl-Anthony Towns can do it all. He was a guy that was considered relatively soft in high school because he was too busy shooting jumpers, and then he went to Kentucky and Calipari made it clear to him, you better not shoot any damn jumpers when you here. We're going to put your behind down low. And he helped that boy develop a post game, which is why he ended up being the #1 overall pick. Karl-Anthony Towns is somebody I slept on as well. This brother's legit. He's big time. He's a go-to guy. He's a #1 offensive option. And the same arguments that you made in terms of teams in a conference having to watch out for him. How are we going to deal with this guy? This guy being able to guard not just down low, but away from the perimeter. These are all things you could also say about Karl-Anthony Towns. So what I would say to you is that considering that they're both the same age, that they both have youth on their side, that they're both 7 feet and above, I'm going to take the Karl-Anthony Towns that can play with his back to the basket as well as facing the basket. He ain't the shooter that Porzingis is, no doubt about that. But he's pretty good.
Stephen A? You know what it reminds me of?
It's right up in the air, though. It's close.
I agree. You know what it reminds me of in its way is Shaq and Olajuwon. I'm not saying that their games are exactly the same, but obviously in Porzingis and Shaq's case. But Olajuwon was the more complete player, the better player. I thought he was better than Shaq. But somehow, Shaq was the more dominating force. Shaq was the guy that the whole league had to figure out what to do with, who you had to devote more resources to. To me,
yeah, but so what are you saying?
I'm saying that Towns is Olajuwon, and Porzingis, not in terms of style of play, but in terms of potential of the force he can be, is more like Shaq. In this case, his height and his shot make him unguardable and unstoppable potentially.
Hold on, because I got a question for you. I'm really interested in knowing your answer to this. You know I know that Shaq is the most dominant force of my lifetime.
Right.
Okay? That's what I consider Shaquille O'Neal to be.
Sure.
Shaquille O'Neal never won a title with Penny Hardaway. All right? Had Eddie Jones, Van Exel, and all of these boys. Couldn't win a title with them. Won a title with Kobe. Olajuwon, who did he have? Number love for my brother Kenny Smith now. Okay, we appreciate Robert Horry. All right, we got Otis Thorpe. All right, Mario Elliott. Still love him to this very day. But none of them were Kobe. So when we say Shaq, and then we say Olajuwon. What I'm saying is we can't ignore it, but the flip side to it is that, excuse me, Olajuwon never had a Kobe.
On the
I know
same
Clyde
page.
Drexler jumped on a wagon later on, but I'm just saying the point is he had that Kobe.
Stephen A.,
Shaq
we're on the same page. That's why at the time, look, my late great brother Sam used to talk about this. When Jordan retired, it's like, okay, here's the parallel universe. Who is the best player in the world in a parallel universe without Michael Jordan? And was it Shaquille O'Neal? No, it was Hakeem Olajuwon. He was the best player in the universe, and Shaq was crewed deep back then. Penny and all those guys in Orlando, and it didn't matter. They got destroyed. So I understand. That's what I'm saying. This is why it's a tough argument, because Karl-Anthony Towns is more like the Olajuwon, not as physically freakish, but a better overall player. But in the end, who do you really want? The physical freak who you just can't stop, I think, here.
I got it, but the difference is that the dominance in terms of Shaquille O'Neal, there was a huge discrepancy in terms of pure dominance, physical dominance between Shaq and Olajuwon. In the case of Karl-Anthony Towns and Porzingis, I don't think that gap exists, and that's what I'm saying.
Maybe 7'3", though, brother. 7'3". Ugh.
Guys,
He's open all day at every point.
Gentlemen, we got to move on. Cam Newton enjoyed the Panthers' run last year, and you don't want to miss what Richard Sherman had to say about Carolina's struggles this season. And later, Cowboys play tonight, which means 3 extra days of rest before the showdown next weekend with the Giants. So how much of an advantage is this for Big D? Let's reminisce. After the Panthers beat the Seahawks in the divisional round of last year's playoffs, quarterback Cam Newton ran around Bank of America Stadium high-fiving fans. But when one Seahawks fan dangled a 12 flag near him, he happily grabbed it, crumpled it, and tossed it away. Richard Sherman was asked if Cam crossed the line with his gesture.
A lot of Seahawks fans weren't happy last year after the game when Cam Newton grabbed the 12 flag, crumpled it up, and threw it away. I know you've always defended his celebrations during games, but did he cross the line when he did that after the game last year?
Yeah, he probably did, and, I guess karma gets you. Doesn't look like you're going to be in the playoffs this year.
Sherman and the Seahawks host the Panthers this Sunday in a must-win for Carolina. Mark Schlereth in the house. Good to see you.
Good to see you guys, man. Always great to be with you guys.
Max, I want to start with you.
Yeah.
Does Richard Sherman just need to be quiet?
No, it's the last thing he needs to do. I love me some Richard Sherman. Everyone talks about Stanford, he's smart and all that. Yeah, that's fine. Lots of people are smart. Well, some people are anyway. But he is not afraid to express his opinion. He's not going up to people saying, hey, do you have a microphone? Can I say something? He's up at a dais. They're asking him questions. And would you rather him give a boring, PC, homogenized nonsense answer? Or would you rather him tell you what he thinks? He tells you what he thinks, and by the way, has had great success doing that his entire career, and he's playing a position where sometimes even when he's not burnt, it'll look like he's burnt, and he has to take responsibility for that, and he still talks that smack. I love this guy.
Listen, he comes from an angle of understanding. You talk about intelligence. He is well thought out, but here's the deal. We all want truth from our athletes until they tell the truth. Yeah. And then we're like, oh my gosh, you can't say that. Guy just comes out and tells it like it is. And that's exactly how it is. You'll put that stuff up. This is how it works in the NFL. There's bulletin board material works for a reason. And it works during the course of the week for preparation. Getting your guys ready. The guys who aren't maybe the professionals you need them to be, that stuff gets you amped up. Once the game's kicked off, you're not thinking about that 12th man flag and the crumple up and all that stuff. But there is that karma aspect of it. And if you're going to be that front runner, you're going to be pounding your chest, you're going to be doing the Superman stuff. When things don't go well, boy, I tell you what, NFL players, coaches, they want to pile on Cam Newton. That's the way it is. And so good for Richard Sherman, man. Good for him. I find him, the only thing I didn't like that really bothered me is after that playoff game against San Francisco when he went after Michael Crabtree, who worked his butt off to come back that year from an Achilles tendon injury, and I thought that was completely disrespectful and out of the realm.
Do you think he was being honest, though? Do you think he really did believe Crabtree? Because I agree with you. I felt like it was a low blow because he had just proven that he's better than Crabtree. You don't have to rub it in his face, but Do you think it was an honest opinion? I thought that's what Sherman thought at the time.
It probably was what he thought at the time. That was the only thing that ever really bothered me with Sherman. But I tell you what, I find him for the most part intelligent, refreshing, and he has a well thought out plan when he gets up to speak. And for that, I applaud him.
Stephen A.
Well, first of all, Richard Sherman is a brilliant brother, and he's somebody to be admired, not just respected, but admired. But just because you are that way doesn't mean you should always say something. To answer the question directly, does he need to be quiet? Absolutely not. But does he need to watch what he says sometimes? Yes, he does. It doesn't mean that he's not doing it. I would just caution that just because you have the platform and just because you have knowledge about every situation doesn't mean you need to speak on everything. I mean, listen, we do this show every day. It's a debate show. Look at all the stuff that we talk about, y'all. Are you trying to tell me we touch on everything we could? There are some things we don't touch for a variety of reasons. And you have to take those things into consideration. Richard Sherman plays in the National Football League. Him going at camp, got no issues with that. Him going at the Carolina Panthers, bringing up karma, I have no issues with that. When you dabbing and celebrating the way that they were last year during games against opponents, it was deemed as disrespectful, and Cam Newton went on the record and said, y'all don't like it, stop it, and shut me up. Well, it seems like a lot of teams have caught on, and that's exactly what they're doing to the Carolina Panthers this year. But as it pertains to the NFL, there are times when Richard Sherman has said things about the league office and things of that nature, and there's a residual impact. Not only that, the way you project yourself, sometimes you're going to take unnecessary hits. Remember that hit against Buffalo on Monday night when he damaged the kicker? If you had a better reputation at times, you would not have had a bevy of people questioning your character and whether or not that was a dirty play and that's something that you would do. Remember when the kicker's wife responded in such a disrespectful manner towards him? Of course, she was wrong to do so, and she had no business doing that. But people like myself and others had to come to the defense of Richard Sherman. He wasn't in a position to do so because the image that he had put out there from time to time, he would have looked bad had he come back at her in a particular kind of way. So these are the kind of things that you have to be sensitive to. And I'll close by saying this. And I've said this to many people that I admire and respect on many occasions, as they have said to me. If everybody were you, you wouldn't be special. You're special for a reason. You have to recognize that, and you have to make sure that you guard against it. So I don't want him to be quiet. I want him to continue to be himself, but at the same time recognize that that brother that's from Compton, that's graduated from Stanford, that is highly, highly intelligent, when he questions the intellect of other people, like officials don't even know the rules and this and that and whatever, man, everybody ain't Richard Sherman. I've been told by numerous players on the Seahawks, they are there with their notebooks, Schlereth, Max, Molly, taking notes. Richard Sherman sits back, doesn't watch, doesn't write down anything. And he goes on the field and remembers every damn thing himself and everybody is supposed to do. Yeah. He's got it.
That's why
he is
that's
special.
That's why I disagree with the idea that he should ever bite his tongue. Although I do agree that doesn't mean that you will be perfect every time you talk. And sometimes it felt wrong what he said about Crabtree too, because it's humiliating a defeated opponent, right? And it just didn't, but I do think he was being honest. And there will be times, if you comment all the time, where you will wish that you hadn't said something. But I don't think that's a good enough reason to start biting your tongue if he is a guy with something on the ball who's unafraid to state his opinion.
I remember
that's
you
good.
said
he
that.
makes the world more interesting, and I like
question.
Yeah, no, listen, I have no issue with him, and I think all the things you guys said about his ability to articulate, his position, his intelligence, all true, and I love his honesty.
And it's consistent. The honesty is consistent. Listen, you're all special in my eyes, including Richard Sherman. You know who's doing something special, though? Those Dallas Cowboys, and Mark is sticking around to let us know how much of an advantage Dallas will have by getting 3 extra days rest before the showdown, Max. It's going to be real at MetLife.
What is going on here?
Between Dallas
Mark,
and New
you
York
want to talk to the
next
Cowboys
weekend.
too? Oh, Lord.
But tonight, the Cowboys go for 11 straight wins when they travel north to Minnesota. After the game, America's team will have a nice 10-day break before they face the division rival Giants next Sunday. I also want to mention Mike Zimmer will not be coaching tonight. He just had eye surgery. Mark Schler is still with us, but I'm going to start with Stephen A. on this one. Stephen A., how much of an advantage is this for Dallas, having that 10-day rest, so to speak?
I don't think it's much of an advantage. I mean, listen, the Dallas Cowboys, whether they had the rest or not, I just think their offensive line is so massive. They're so accustomed to beating people up that it's really not going to matter. I guess you could say it gives them an advantage because rested, they'll have more fresh legs to just steamroll over the Minnesota's defensive line. And, you know, that's the best thing that you can say. Ultimately, it doesn't come down to much to me. I don't see Minnesota as being much of a threat because I don't see their offense as much of a threat. I think the defense can keep things interesting for a while, but ultimately if you give Dallas's offense with that offensive line enough opportunities, those big beefy boys up front are simply going to wear you down. That's just the way it is.
Well, here's the deal. All right, they're going to play Minnesota tonight. And Minnesota has the #1 ranked defense from an efficiency standpoint. I don't think it really matters. Then they'll have that break before they play your Giants, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Now, normally I would look at that break when it comes to offensive football, and I would say that's a disadvantage. Because offensive football, especially in this day and age, is all about rhythm. And that can get you out of a rhythm, especially throwing the ball. But not the Dallas Cowboys, because they'll create their own rhythm. Stephen A is 100% right. Man, they will line up and they will play smash mouth. They are so multiple in their running game. They'll run zone. They'll run power. They'll run counter. They'll run ISO. You name it. Jason Witten doesn't get the credit that he deserves as one of the great players in this league because he'll line up on the backside, be a cutoff guy. On the front side, be a lead blocker, in line as a tight end. Motion in the backfield, be a lead blocker on a linebacker. The guy's a great player. So then you add the wrinkle of a Dak Prescott in the red zone, running the zone read stuff with him on the edge. They're a team that creates their own rhythm because they bludgeon you at the point of attack. And so when you can do that, it's amazing what it opens up for you as a quarterback throwing the football. I would say usually that kind of break becomes a bit of a disadvantage. It gets you out of your rhythm, but not for the Dallas Cowboys.
What do you know about offensive play, Mark Schlereth? Take it from me. You know how much Madden I've played in my life?
Okay.
Nonsense. Let me tell you something. Not only is this a huge advantage for the Dallas Cowboys this time of year, of course timing is a big issue, but they're a run-heavy offense.
Right.
How much timing? It's not like pass-happy. It's offensive line.
That's why I said it's...
So they get not only 10 days going into the Giants game, and I put the camera on. Okay, good. I'm going to pull a Stephen A. Smith. Let me tell you something, schedule makers in the NFL. The Giants on consecutive weeks, that's right, I'm hijacking this and making this about the Giants, have to play the Steelers on 10 days rest and then the Cowboys on 10 days rest? What's going on? That is especially this time of year, football is basically an ongoing traffic accident. It's an injury. Right. And this time of year, those extra 3 days of rest, Mark, what does that mean for you as a player who's banging up against guys all week? 3 days extra rest late in the season.
Huge. That's huge, especially for those guys who are banged up and beat up. And a guy like me that oftentimes come Thursday or Friday, I was still limping around trying to get ready for Sunday, to give me those extra days, that is huge. So
you admit the league is lining up against my New York Football Giants?
The league, yeah, I will admit that hindsight being 2020, if the schedule makers actually really looked at this going, that's a real disadvantage. But listen, man, the schedule is littered with disadvantages like this. When they make it, they have all kinds of these games that just aren't right. But the bottom line is you got to line up and play the ones that are on your schedule.
Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh on 10 days rest, and then you get the best team in football maybe, and they get another 10 days. What? Why? All right, anyway, I'm over that. I just need to say
they don't like the Giants.
They don't like the Giants. They're trying to keep Eli down.
Do not like the Giants.
Giants, any shot at winning that one?
Oh, you always have a shot. I mean,
big shot?
With Eli, right?
You always have a shot with Eli to win games.
Thank you.
I mean, and it's in New York, and Eli has been really good in New York. Odell Beckham Jr. has been great. Their passing game has been great. They've played much better on the defensive side of the ball here down the stretch. And oh, by the way, quietly 8-3, one of the top 5 or 6 teams in the league. If you look at power rankings right now, they've quietly amassed an 8-3 record, kind of under the radar, if you will.
So please, great football gods, I will sacrifice another 2 seasons of the Knicks if you just let the Giants somehow win a Super Bowl this year.
Oh, yeah, that was funny.
That's not even that. You know what? Sacrificing another 2 years of the Knicks. Come on. I mean, how much
more?
Yeah, I mean, come on. You've already sacrificed.
I'm not giving up any more Yankees seasons.
Okay,
it's enough already.
All right.
Mark, thank you so much.
Got it.
Good to see you. Coming up next, if you had one game to win, which quarterback would you want? Big Ben Roethlisberger or Eli Manning? The guys discuss it after the break.
Anybody that's got a kickoff guy or a kicker with a strong leg would be in favor of it. It would, the idea would be that if you split the uprights on a kickoff, you get a point or you get rewarded for it in some way. I mean, I've heard the version I like is you split the uprights, you get a point. I've also heard you split the uprights and instead of the opposing team starting at the 25, maybe they start at the 10.
Ravens kicker Justin Tucker, who's been so clutch this season, making some interesting suggestions for a kickoff rule change during an appearance on the Dan Patrick Show Tuesday. Max, like, love, or hate it?
I love it. And by the way, whichever you want to split the uprights and get a point, or you want them to start at the 10, whatever produces variation and things that are other than automatic results, as the extra point used to be, for example, after a touchdown. After all, why do it? Now, if I had my druthers, there'd be no kicking in football at all, just because it's called football and it came from soccer. The Ivy Leagues made it better and gave us American football. We don't need the vestiges of soccer in the game. But since they're there, let's make it interesting. Whatever is less automatic is better. This creates variation and increased probability of various events occurring. I like it better.
That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard come out of a football player's mouth. No wonder why people want to get rid of kickers. Exactly. He's not a football player. He's a kicker who's, by the way, perfect this year. I mean, what is it here? He's made all 27 of his field goals. All right. I mean, he's been perfect this year, but I don't give a damn. It's just nonsense. It was from somebody I don't want to hear a damn thing from because you're a kicker. You're lucky to be in a damn uniform on a football field. You got to be kidding me. So let me get this straight. I'm going to kick off, and if I kick it far and it goes through the goalpost, which by the way prevents an actual kickoff from taking place, a kickoff return from taking place. Oh, because of that, I deserve a point? You got to be crazy. That is nonsense. It is asinine, and I can't believe you, Beetlejuice. I can't believe that you would sit up there and think that it is okay to have that in. But it's nonsense. It's a waste of time. Please.
Look, you want to get rid of kicking in football?
That's right.
You want to do that
I've been
right
called
now?
George Jefferson many times. It's all right. I'm good with it. Go ahead.
I'm shocked about it. But look, if you want to make a deal with me right now, we just take kicking out of football. I'm with it. We don't need kicking in football, really. But if it's going to be there, if that's not what you're saying, if you're saying, then why not? Make it interesting.
What do you mean, why not? Hold on, think about this. You deserve a point for kicking it out of the end zone?
Yeah, you did something hard.
Nonsense.
You did something difficult
that is
to
nonsense. It shouldn't be, not for a kicker. It shouldn't be difficult at all.
Go to the amusement park.
Well, you know what, Max? Why not give him a point for an onside kick? All right, what are you talking about? Why not give him a point for kicking the foot, for punting it out of bounds?
One of the reasons that American football is
nonsense.
One of the reasons American football is so excellent is because the genesis of the game is the rules committee, essentially. The Ivy Leagues got together and said, let's make soccer better.
I noticed how you threw in the Ivy Leagues. I noticed how you threw that in, Ivy Leagues. The Ivy Leagues got it together, right? Nobody else. It's just Ivy League people that got it together, right? Just stop it.
Beetlejuice, you lost this one.
Please.
Molly.
Please.
What's Stephen A.
South Antonio. You got to be kidding. This is so asinine. It don't make no sense. It doesn't make any sense.
The point is, the rules committee has been around making the product better and better. Even as purists were saying, no, don't do that. This is the way we've always done it. And they shouldn't be afraid to stop now. Keep making it better. Whether it's an extra point, whether it means you take it out on your own 10 instead of a touchback, whatever it is, I like it. Variation and whatever's not automatic. I like it.
I will say this.
Reward things that are difficult.
I will say this. Yes. it's real, and I'm getting on it because I think it's asinine, it's stupid.
Yes.
I wouldn't, no way on earth, but I'm not going to blame Justin Tucker for it. Here's why. Because it'll make him more relevant. It's just another way. It's another way for you to contribute. Yeah. So what you're trying to do with your non-football playing self, okay, because you're a kicker, and we all know they're not football players. What you're trying to say, and I don't mean it, I'm not trying to be but so disrespectful, because I know it's Jay Feely out there who's going to run for office one day. I don't want him up on Capitol Hill getting the IRS or somebody after me or something like that, because I said something about kickers. So I got to be careful. But here's what I'm trying to say. The kicker is, a kicker goes on a radio show and basically sits up there and comes up with some cockamamie idea to generate points other than a field goal or extra point. You actually want an extra point for just a kickoff? You've got to be kidding me. No way.
Would you ask a kicker for his autograph when you were a kid and he turned you down?
Never.
What happened?
Never. I will ask Jay Feely for his autograph once he successfully runs for office, whether it's Congress or senator, because I think that he's going to be a good politician. I'd ask him for his autograph, maybe. I doubt it, but he would deserve it if I asked.
Everybody's got an agenda, even Justin Tucker. Can't blame him, right? Baltimore hosts Miami Sunday. That is going to be a good one.
I wouldn't be like this if this was Jay Feely, though. I would be nicer because I love Jay Feely. I would be nicer. But damn it, the idea is ridiculous. The idea is ridiculous.
Hermit, you're trying to get through with something like what?
I gotta be careful. Jay Feely's a politician, man. He can hurt me. He might hurt me one day.
We asked our Twitter followers earlier in the show, would you rather have Big Ben or Eli if you had to win one game? Max Kellerman, 68% say...
Yeah.
Big Ben.
Of course. Listen, Mozart died penniless. I mean, this is the way the world goes. Artists aren't appreciated in their time.
You are special. That's a good
one.
one.
For one game, just read Nate Silver's article. It's from 2015, 538.com.
The election's over.
Eli
I'm not
Manning,
reading Nate Silver.
The most clutch quarterback in the history of the NFL playoffs. It's not me saying it. It's someone smarter than me.
By the way, I like Nate. I like Nate Silver. I'm only playing. I'll read him. I read him all the time. I'll read him again. But Big Ben Roethlisberger is the dude that I'm going with, man. Eli Manning's led the league in interception 3 times. He's got, I don't know how many more interceptions he's got in his career. Look, I love Eli, but he ain't Big Ben to me. He's just not.
Unless all the chips are on the line.
Who's more reliable?
And then,
say what you want to say.
He's better than Joe Montana in the playoffs. That's not me saying it again. That's what the evidence says.
First of all, you probably missed half the game because after covering fights in Vegas, you would sleep the following Sunday. I don't trust it, Max Kellerman. Most of the Giants games are at 1 o'clock, not 4 o'clock. You're probably sleeping until 3 o'clock, Max. I'm not buying it.
I get these bags under my eyes from sleeping? No. No.
Try the glasses. Try the glasses. It helps. It helps.
There it is.
It helps.
All right, what do you guys have for a score tonight? Vikings, Cowboys, what do we think? Lopsided game?
No, I think it's tough, and I think the Cowboys win.
Stephen A., going Cowboys?
I got the Cowboys like 24-13.
All right, guess what? More bags tomorrow for all of us because we got to stay up for that one. It's going to be good.